Hello folks, this is Aaron. In this tutorial, I'm going to be walking you through the process of creating the 3D model of the lollipop that we drew in the reference images tutorial. Since this object has several parts to it, even though it is still pretty simple, I would consider this to be a more complex 3D model. One that we don't want a continuous mesh on, like the apple in Finn's tutorial using the mirror tool for the first time showed you how to create a continuous mesh. In this tutorial, we're going to be going over how to combine several different meshes into one object to create a more complex object. So first we'll be creating the stick, which is essentially just a long cylinder with a couple of beveled edges. Then we're going to be creating the candy part, which is also a cylinder that's been rotated 90 degrees so that the circle part is facing us, and then we'll scale that down and add some bevels to soften up the hard edge. Then finally, I'll be using a series of cubes to model the bow. So let's get started. First things first, I am going to press the number 1 on my number pad in order to get the front view. If you don't have a number pad, what you do to do that is you go to the view bar up here, select view, go down here to viewpoint, and you can just click front. Now, I'll want to be using 2 views during part of this modeling process. So how I'm going to get 2 views active, as you can see there's 1 view right now, we are just looking at the front view, but I want to have 2 different views. So I'm going to go up here, past the compass, into this little corner, right in the corner between this large workspace area and then this layer and tool section. So right here, up in this corner, scooch up there until you can see that your icon turns into a little plus. Now click down with your left click and drag your mouse down to the left, like this. Now we have 2 views that are active. And just really quickly, I will show you how to get rid of that if you don't want to work in this format. So instead of going over here to this corner, what you'll do is head to the middle, right here where these 2 views meet, up here at the top until your cursor turns into a little plus, just like before. But instead of clicking and dragging down to the left, we're going to click down and drag to the right until you can see this light arrow, and then you release your click and it will return you to 1 view. So just again, I want to work with 2 views, so I'm going to go back up here, left click, there we go. Okay, so this view right here, I will go ahead and keep it at front, but this view I would like to be from the side. So I believe that is numpad number 3. Yes, it is. So now I'll zoom in till it's about the same height as the front view. And now we can work on our object in both of these views at the same time. As you can see, this is the reference object that Finn created at the end of the reference images tutorial, just so that we could refer to how large the lollipop was going to be lengthwise. I don't think that we need to use that anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and over here in the layer tab, I'm going to click on this reference object and select it so you know that you're on the right one. And then over here toward the right, I'm going to click this little eyeball icon to hide it. So the object is still there, it's just not active on my workspace view. If I click that little eyeball again, it will come up again. So the first thing that we're going to need to do in order to create the stick is we're going to create a simple shape of a cylinder. So to do that, you just do Shift A to bring up the add menu, and you go to this top option, which is called mesh, head over here to the right, go down to cylinder right here. So as you can see, this cylinder is quite large, much larger than we need it to be. I'm going to be scaling it down in order to match roughly the width of the stick on my reference image. So let me zoom in a little bit. I'm in object mode currently, which is exactly where I want to be. So now I'm going to hold down the S button and start scaling it down by pulling my cursor inward toward this little circle icon. I'm going to left click to confirm that transform. Awesome. So this cylinder was created at the origin point of the canvas, and it looks like our reference images are just a little bit off. So I'm going to go ahead and scooch this front image over just a tad. Let me double check to make sure my side one is okay. It looks like it is. So let's go ahead and just scooch our front reference image over just a little bit to better match up with that, the cylinder. There we go. And you want to be zoomed in a little bit further to do that in order to make that fine-tuned movement. The more you zoom out, the more jerky it will be. Okay, so now our reference image is okay. It looks like the back one also needs to be adjusted, so let me do that really quickly. Excuse me, I was moving the back image the first time, so now I will go ahead and move the front. There we go. You'll know that it's correct once both of the images are layered evenly on top of each other and you don't see any gray lines or blurry looking lines. Perfect. I will click out of that. Okay, so now that we have our cylinder and it is the proper scale, it's the same width roughly as the stick on our reference image, I'm going to go ahead and move the selected cylinder down. Whoops, let me select our cylinder again. I'm going to move this down until roughly the middle of the stick, because we're going to next scale it up. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to not use the S key. I'm going to go up here to the scale tool and click on that. And now you can see that our little transform arrows have changed into the scale arrows. And up on this blue one right here, I'm going to scale up our cylinder so that it's a little bit longer, just like the stick of the lollipop, until it's at about the same length. And it's totally okay if the stick part goes up a little bit because the candy is going to be overlapping it once we make that. I'm just going to scooch it down a little bit. Oh, a little bit too much. Let me zoom in. There we go. That's about right. So now that we have our cylinder all stretched out like this, we're going to go ahead and add a couple of bevels on each of the hard edges at the top and the bottom of the stick, just to kind of soften it up a little bit. You know, since we're not actually going to see the top of the stick, I'm just going to add the bevels down to the bottom one. So let me do that. Let me zoom in. Okay. Now, I actually am not going to want to be in the front view while I do this because I want to make sure that it looks good in perspective view. So to get out of this view, all I'm going to do is hold down my middle mouse button and it should automatically take me to the perspective view, which is where you can move the camera at all angles, just like this. Okay, so since we want to modify our bottom edge here, I'm going to have to switch over to edit mode by pressing tab. You'll know you've pressed that once all of these additional tools pop up. And you can see right now I have the vertex edit select. So what I'm going to do is hit the number 2 on my regular keyboard, and it should switch to the edges. It looks like it's selecting our whole cylinder already, so I'm going to left click out of it in order to deselect. Now, let's get this edge loop selected down here. So I click one of them, and then I hold Alt and click another, and that whole edge loop should have been selected. So now, in order to add a nice bevel to soften up this edge, I'm going to use the keyboard commands Control and B. And then once I just drag my cursor up a little bit, you can see that another seam has been added here. I'm going to add a couple of them, at least 2. I'm going to left click down once I have an edge that I like. But you don't want to just try doing anything else with it until you click out of it. Now we will want to go ahead and select that same bottom edge loop here, like we did before, with clicking this and then using Alt and clicking the others, just like that. And the same thing, Control B to add another bevel between these two. And then we left click to confirm that transform, and then deselect in order to get it all where it needs to be. So now we have a couple of bevels here. what I want to do is first I'm going to select these bottom two edge loops. By clicking one, holding down Alt, clicking another, and this loop has been selected. Now I'm going to press Shift, click on one of these, hold down Alt, click on one of these. Oops. So it looks like you can only select one edge loop at a time that way, but that's okay. That's not that important. We can work with this. So with this bottom edge loop selected, I'm going to go ahead and hold down S so that I activate my scale, and I'm going to just start bringing that in just a little bit. Not too much, just because we have this other edge loop on top that I'm going to bring in too. Once I like that, I'm going to left click to confirm it and click outside. Now I'm going to modify this edge loop here. Just like before, click one of the edges, hold down Alt, and click another edge, and it'll select the whole loop. Then I'm going to hold down S and bring in that bevel just a little bit more. And you know, now that I've brought this one in, I find that I want to adjust this bottom one just a little bit more. So clicking on that, holding down Alt, clicking another to select the whole loop, holding down S to start scaling it down, and scooch it in like this. I'm also going to go ahead and left click to confirm the scale change, go up here to the Move tool, and scooch this up just a little bit. Oops. So it won't let me modify this right now because I just made another transform change, so I need to click outside of the edge to deselect it. Then I'm going to go ahead and try selecting it again, clicking one edge, holding down Alt, clicking another edge to select the whole loop, and I'm going to bring this loop forward a little bit, or up, excuse me. It doesn't seem to want to do it for some reason, so let's figure out what's going on here. So I have a feeling that the reason it's not letting me move this right now is because I have this little snap icon turned on right now. So up here, I'm going to go to this little magnet, which is the snap button, and I'm going to deselect that and see if that helps. And it does. Perfect. So just bringing that up a little bit. Now I have a nice soft edge for this stick for our lollipop. So I'm going to hit the number pad 1 again to get back to the front view, just to double check that it looks okay. And I think that that looks great. That's a fine looking lollipop stick if I ever did see one. So now let's move on to the candy part. I'm going to go ahead and save first. A good tip when you're working with 3D models is that you want to save a lot and also save several versions of the project that you're working on, especially if you're making a more complex model. Just because even though I described this as a complex model, as far as complex models go, it's pretty simple, about as simple as you could get, just because it's only made up of simple shapes. It just happens to have a number of simple shapes in it. I'm not going to save a bunch of versions of it, but I definitely would recommend doing that in your case. So over here in the layer menu, just for organization's sake, I'm going to double click on the word cylinder because that is the cylinder of the stick. And just to keep track of that, I'm going to rename it stick. So I will select stick. Since we're in edit mode, we can't actually select it. My bad. Let me hit tab. And now we have that selected. I'm going to click out of it, select the stick again, and you can see that stick is the cylinder that we were working with before. Okay, so now let's go ahead and start on the candy part for real this time. So first things first, I am going to go ahead and hold down Shift, hit the key A to bring up the Add menu, go to Mesh, and go down here to Cylinder, just like before. Unlike before, however, we are not going to scale this down just yet. We're actually going to rotate it. Just to be safe, I'm going to select the cylinder from the layer menu, just because there's a lot of objects on the scene right now. So we have that selected. So over here, I'm going to go down to this tool right here, which is the context menu. And you can see that since I'm in transform mode, the transform pops up. And since we're trying to rotate it, I'm going to go ahead and select a value from this rotation option. The axis that we're going to be rotating it on, I believe, is the y-axis. So let's go ahead and try adding 90 degrees to this. Click on it and type in 90. Perfect. Now, over in the front view, you can see that it's not quite right. The hard cylinder part is still visible on the side that we want the circle to be on, which is this part. So we're going to have to rotate another 90 degrees. But instead of on the y-axis, this time it's going to be on the x-axis. So go over here to the x-axis rotation and hit 90. And there we go. Now we can see the circle part on the front view, which is what we want. So now I'm going to switch to the Move tool, and I'm going to scooch up our cylinder just a little bit, roughly until this point is about right here in the middle of the lollipop. And now I'm going to hold down the S key to start scaling down my cylinder until the border of it is roughly the same size as the border of the lollipop. Just like that. Left click to confirm, click outside of the object, and there we go. It's okay if it's a little bit off. The reference images are just here as a guide. I don't need to be perfectly accurate with them. So now I'm going to select our cylinder again from the layer menu over here, just to make sure I'm selecting the correct object. This time I'm going to be paying attention to the side view. So we are in the Move tool currently, but I would like to switch over to the Scale tool. This time I'm going to click the tool rather than using the holding down S, just because the only part I want to scale is the x-axis one. So I'm going to grab this green arrow and scooch it in like this until it's nice and skinny. Left click to confirm that. Click outside. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to add some beveled edges, just like this one down here on the stick, but I'm going to add it to the candy part of our lollipop. So I'm going to select this. We're going to switch over to edit mode by pressing tab, and we are already in edge mode. So go ahead and select one edge, hold down the Alt key, select another, and this whole edge loop is selected now. Then I'm going to use Control B and move a bevel inward like this. Perfect. Click outside. Now we're going to select this edge, hold down Alt, select this edge to select this whole edge loop. I'm going to press Control B again to create a bevel, and I'm going to drag it in. Or excuse me, I'll actually drag this one out just a little bit to create an edge between the hard edge from before and our new one. Just like that. Click outside of the object to confirm that transform. Okay, so now we've got some bevels here. I'm going to go ahead and select this one first. Left click to select that one, hold down Alt, select the whole loop like that. And now I'm going to hold down the S key and scale it in just a little bit. Left click to confirm, and then scooch it back just a tad to create a softer edge here. Okay, now I like the position of this edge here, so the next one I'm going to do is this one. So select this edge, hold down Alt, select this one to select all of them. Now I am going to actually kind of like the scale. I think it's right where it needs to be, but I'm going to scooch it out just a little bit like this. And there we go. Just to make sure that that looks good, I'm going to go ahead and go over to my number pad and hit number 1. And it does. It looks very nice. Perfect. So now I'm going to pay attention to the side view, just like before. It looks like some edges may have gotten mixed up here. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust those. You can see that they got a little bit messed up. Not a big deal though. I'm going to go ahead and switch to vertex mode. You can either hit the number 1 on your regular keyboard, or you can go up here and click, and now you can see that we have some vertices to move instead. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one here and scooch it with the Move tool until it's nice and parallel with our other one. So it's a nice straight line. Perfect. And I'll do the same to this vertex down here. Scooch it over. It looks like maybe I might want to move these up a little bit, so let me do that. If you accidentally change your selection tool, which has happened to me a few times since I've started using Blender, and it used to frustrate me a lot. But it's really simple to fix. All you do is left click and hold, drag over to the right, and you can select these different options here. So I like to use the box selector the most. I'm going to click this vertex, and the other vertex behind it is it's moved up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and scooch this one up until it's roughly at the same spot. And then same with the vertex down here. Nice and even. Perfect. I'm going to save now. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and select one of these vertices and then hit Alt, select another another vertex, and now I've selected the edge loop, but instead of the edges, it's selected with the vertices. And I'm going to scooch this forward a little bit, hold down S, and scale it just a tad. Not a whole lot, but just a little bit. Left click to confirm, and click out of it. So now I'm going to change our view in this one to the perspective. There we go. So this is the side we've already edited. We're going to go over to this side now. Now first, I'm going to go back to edge mode, so I have to hit the number 2 on my regular keyboard. Now I can select edges again. I'm going to select one edge, hold down R, select another to select that loop. Now I'm going to press Ctrl B to create a bevel, and start dragging it in, just like this, to create a nice bevel. Now I'm going to left click to confirm that, then click outside. Now we'll do a bevel edge on this one. So left click, hold down Alt, left click again, select the whole loop, Ctrl B to create another bevel, and this bevel is going to be between the other one, like so. Left click to confirm, and click out of it. So it looks like the Lollipop got a little bit messed up. I might have moved those vertices incorrectly. Not a big deal though, a very simple fix. We're actually going to go ahead and start working with the mirror aspect. I was going to save this for the bow, but since our Lollipop got a little bit messed up here, I'm going to go ahead and do this. So I'm going to go down here and select my knife tool so that I can make a nice cut between these two vertices here. In order to do that, I'm going to select 1 on my keyboard to switch to vertices. I'm going to click this one here and drag it all the way up to the top. Left click to confirm that, press enter, and now we have a cut. Very nice. I'm going to go over to this side, do the same thing. Go down here, select my knife tool, selecting this vertex and this vertex down here, clicking that, pressing the enter key, and then hitting escape. Switching tools to the select, clicking outside of the object, and now we have a nice cut here. One thing that you'll notice here from our discussion on quads and tris is that this face has several vertices that are connected to it that do not have cuts away, so it's a multi-sided object. We don't want that. So we're going to use our knife tool to fix that. Select each of the outer vertices and bring it in here to the center. Left click, press enter, and we're good. And keep doing that. Just zooming in here to make sure that I am doing this correctly and not adding any additional vertices in the center here. It's looking good so far. There we go. Now we have all of these faces, and just to make sure that we have access to them, I'm going to switch to the face view, the face select by pressing number 3 and clicking these. And they are all separate faces, which is what we want. Perfect. So now I'm going to rotate to this side, and we're going to do the same thing here that we did on the other with our knife tool. So we'll go back to the vertex mode by pressing 1, go down to the knife tool, and start selecting these outer vertices and bringing them into the center. Perfect. So now we will hit the number 3 just to make sure that I did all these faces correctly. And I did. They look great. Let's check out the center just to make sure we don't have any extra vertices. I don't believe we do, but to check, I'm going to select 1 so that we make sure. And it looks like we only have our 1 vertex and only 1 vertex here. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, so now we can do the fun part. So select the number 3 to switch over to faces, and I'm going to go ahead and use my box selector to select all of these faces here like this, just to make sure that we've got them all selected. Turn to the other side, and this side did not select. That's okay. I'm going to go ahead and manually select all of them by holding down the Shift key and left clicking until all of the faces are selected. Okay, now I'm going to check over here to make sure we still have this side selected. Missed one down here, so hold Shift down, left click, select that face. Perfect. Now I'm going to delete those faces. Delete faces. Perfect. So now we're going to go back to object mode by hitting tab. I'm going to go over here to add a modifier. So how you do that is you go down here to this toolbar, and you can see the context is modifiers. So select that. We're going to go to add modifier and go down to mirror. Okay, so nothing got added just yet because we need to change the axis here. I'm going to select Y. Perfect. And I don't want it to do anything in relation to the x-axis, so I'm going to go ahead and deselect that one. And now we have our mirror. So now I'm going to switch over to edit mode by pressing tab. We're going to go over to the edge mode by pressing 2. And now I want to edit these edges here. Select this edge, hold down Alt, select this one, and start scaling it by holding down the Scale tool. And then I'm going to use left click to confirm that. Go over to the Move tool and scooch it out a little bit. Just so we can see what we're doing, I'm going to go over to this view and I'm going to press the number 3 to get it to the side, just so that we can make sure that we can see what we're doing. Okay, so that edge looks not very good. I'm going to go ahead and scale that just a little bit more. There we go. That's about where we want it. Okay. Press escape, click out. We're good. Select this one, hold down Alt, select this one, select the whole edge loop, scooch it out a little bit. And I'm going to hold down S and scale it up. Click to confirm. Scooch it out a little more. Now I'm going to switch to just this view for a little while. So I'm going to go up here, wait till my compass is a plus, left click and hold, drag down to the right. There we go. So it looks like it got a little bit messed up here by pressing 1 for the vertex. And I'm going to drag it in like this until the vertex is just about in line with the other one. And I'm going to do that for the rest of them. I'm going to go ahead and go over here and turn my stick off so that we can focus on the candy for now. And this one still needs to be scooched. Perfect. And just try to get them as close as you can to your hard axis up here where it's nice and straight. Like that. Just a nice straight line. Okay. So I want to grab these top ones up here. I'll get both of them. Actually, this front one looks okay, but this back one is the one I want to change because it's a little pointy. So I'm going to select that, pull it down a little bit. And do the same with our bottom one here. Now over here, I'm going to go ahead and select clipping over here, just to make sure that those vertices don't move within each other, like this side's vertices don't go into this side's, and so on. Now I like that, so I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. Ooh, I have to switch over to object mode. There we go. Pressing tab will do that. Now I'm going to apply that mirror modifier. And now we have one object selected. Very nice. A good looking lollipop if I do say so myself. I do see a tiny tear down here though that we need to fix. So let's tab back into edit mode. You can see that these vertices here are not connected. So I'm going to go select my box selector. We're already in our vertex mode. Select one vertex, hold down shift, click this one to select two. And then over here we should have a merge tool. And up here we should have an option to merge these vertices by selecting the vertex menu and going down to merge vertices. And we're going to go ahead and do at center to make those two vertices come together exactly in the center of their positions relative to one another. So we'll hit that, and now they are one vertex. So we'll do the same for the rest of the vertices that are not connected that need to be. One way that you can test to make sure that your vertices are connected is by selecting one and moving it. And yep, I'm guessing that none of these vertices are connected, so we're going to have to go through all of them to do that. So starting with this one, because it's not connected, as you can see, there's a hole. So let's go ahead and select both of these vertices. So the way that I would do this is by using your box selector, dragging to select multiples, just to save on some time. I'm going to start using the keyboard controls to do this, and it is Alt-M for mine to pull up that merge menu. So let's go ahead and give that a shot after we select our vertices. I use Alt-M at center. Alright, I do believe we are good. So now that the candy part is done, we're going to be moving on to the bow. So let me save. Go over here to the layer menu. Double click my cylinder that my candy part is and name that candy, just to keep track of it. Let's go ahead and make that stick active again by selecting the eyeball that's next to it on the layer menu. And now let's go ahead and press num1 to get back to our front view, and we'll start making our bow. So I'm going to go back to object mode, deselect, Shift A, mesh. We're going to bring up a cube. And this cube's pretty big, so I'm going to go ahead and scale it down just a tad. And by a tad, I mean a lot. Haha. Go over here to the move tool, scooch it down. And this is actually the back view, it looks like. I'm going to turn off this back reference right here, just so that I can only see the front one, since that's what our bow needs to be focused on. Okay, so this part is going to be the bow tie. So I'm going to go over to the scale tool, scooch it in on this horizontal axis. Next, I'm going to switch over to edit mode by hitting tab. I'm going to deselect it. Then I'm going to select the edge option up here by pressing 2. Now we've got edge select, and we do Control R to add an edge loop in the center. Another Control R after I select outside, right between there, just like that. Okay, now I'm going to add some horizontal edge loops by pretty much the same process. Control R for the very center, enter. Control R, click, enter, Control R, click, enter. Now, just like what we did with the Lollipop before, where we made that mirror modifier, I'm going to do the same thing with this so that our bow is nice and symmetrical. So I'm going to switch over to the face selection by hitting the number 3, using my box selector to drag these to select all of these faces, and I'm going to check in perspective mode to make sure that they are all selected, and they are. So now we're going to hit delete and delete faces, and it doesn't actually look like I did select all of them, my bad. Now we'll just select these by left-clicking them and holding down Shift, left-clicking to select multiple. And just like before, we hit delete, we hit faces. So now we've got this part here. I'm going to tab back into edit mode just so I can scale this in on this axis and then scooch it with our move tool closer to the stick, just like this. Perfect. So now we're going to select our object, go over here to the modifiers tab, hit add modifier, and then mirror. And since we have our y-axis selected, it should automatically duplicate over the y-axis, just like it did with the Lollipop. Okay, now let's tab into edit mode, and we can start using our vertices by pressing 1 to switch to the vertex selection screen. Now I'm just going to start modifying the position of these vertices until I like the look of our bow tie. Again, you can hold down Shift and left click to select multiple objects at the same time. Remember to hit enter to confirm or click outside. Perfect, this is looking good. I think we're ready to go ahead and apply. So switch back over to object mode by hitting tab, select this, and hit apply. And now this should be one object. So let's tab back into edit mode and check out these vertices just to make sure that we did okay. And we did! Perfect. We don't have to go through like we did with the Lollipop where we're connecting all of those vertices because they are good to go. So now I'm going to add just a harder indent on the center part of the bow, or excuse me, of the bow tie. So I'm going to hit number 2 on the keyboard to open up my edge selection mode. I'm going to select one edge, hold down Alt to select the edge loop, and then I'm going to add a couple of bevels. So remember that's Control B, and then you drag it out to make some nice bevels here. Left click to confirm, enter to do it, click outside, and you should be good. Now we did lose our center line here. We still want that, so I'm going to go ahead and select my object and hit Control R. Move my cursor until this one in the center pops up. Left click, press enter, and we're going to go ahead and scale this down while we have it selected by holding down the S key and dragging in like this until we're satisfied with how that looks. Left click to confirm, click outside, and we're good to go. Now we're going to switch over to our side view by pressing 3, and now we're going to add another edge loop on the side. So go ahead and hit Control R again until we have the center one. Hit Control R again, enter, Control R again, left click, enter, and we should have enough edge loops now. I do want to do the same thing that I did before where I hardened that indent, so I'm going to do that on this side as well. Left click one edge, hold down Alt, click this edge to select the whole loop, hold down S, and we're going to scale it in just a tad, like that. Left click to confirm, press enter, and we're good. So now I'm going to modify some of these vertices on the side view. So I'm going to go ahead and hit 1 to go back to vertex selection. And I'm going to use my box selector to start doing this. So it looks like I was not selecting the other vertex, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to this mode just so I can make sure that I am selecting all of the ones that I want. I'm going to turn my stick off just because I need to be able to see this side. There we go, soften up that edge a little bit. Same thing down here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and hit number 2, go back to edge mode, select this middle edge loop, just like we've been doing with holding down Alt. I'm going to go ahead and stop saying that because I've been saying it so much at this point that hopefully you've picked it up. Hold down the S key to bring this edge out a little bit like this, a little bit more dramatic. Left click to confirm, hit enter, we're good. Same thing up here. I'm going to go ahead and make a modification to this one and this edge loop down here as well. Perfect. And I think that should just about do it for our bow tie. So let's go ahead and start on the ribbon part. I'm going to go ahead and save. Now the cube has been grouped a little odd, so I'm going to go ahead and scooch it out. And I'm going to rename it bow underscore tie because this is the tie part. So now I'm going to start on the ribbon. I'm going to activate our stick again in the layer menu so that we have that up so we can see what we're doing. We're going to go over to the front view by holding the numpad 1 key, and now we are in front. We're going to go switch to object mode by hitting tab, and now we're going to do Shift A, mesh, cube. We're going to scooch this down and position it properly so that we can start using it. Scale it down a little bit here. Now at this point, I want to try to position this cube so that these two edges right here are about right here on our reference image. So I'm just going to tab back into edit mode. We're going to hit 1 to select the vertices. We're going to scooch this down. So for some reason when I select both of them that way, it doesn't seem to actually want to select both of them, so I'm going to select them in this view here. And we will tab back into 1 for the front view, scooch these down and over like so until they're just barely inside of the tie part. Same for these vertices. Perfect. Now I'm going to select all of these vertices over here. Go back to the front view. Hit our move key. Scooch it back until our vertices are about lined up here. So I have to scooch these top ones up a little bit more. Alright, so now that these are in a good position, what I'm going to do next is hit face selection by hitting number 3 on the keyboard. Select this face, and we will switch back to our other view. And now I'm going to press the E key and drag out some extrusions. I think I'll want at least 3 or 4 in addition to our cube that we started off with. So there's left click to confirm that. And don't click out of it. We're still going to extrude some more. So press E again. Scooch out again. Left click to confirm. Press E again. Extrude out a little more. Left click to confirm. And one more. Press E. Left click to confirm. And hit enter. Now we have this going on, which we will start to make into our bow. So let's go ahead and start selecting these vertices again by hitting 1 to bring up vertex selection. Go to our box selector. Start bringing these up. You just generally want to try to match the curve as best as you can. We'll add a couple more edge loops here, though, to soften that curve. Enter. And we're just going to keep doing that until we get the general shape of the bow that we want. We'll also add another edge loop, or 2, or 5, we'll see, horizontally here as well. So don't worry too much about how hard your edges are going to be at first. Now we can start doing the same thing to the bottom. Okay, so now we have our cubes in a way that makes sense for the shape of our bow. We're going to add a few more edge loops now. Come to think of it, I think I'm going to scooch these vertices just a little bit more so that this line isn't quite as curved. Remember, our edge loop spacing is quite important to pay attention to, so we'll just go ahead and fix that really quick. There we go, that's better. Okay. So let's go ahead and do Control R to add a few more edge loops. We'll have to go over to edge selection first, and then we can start doing that. I'm adding a couple of horizontal and vertical ones. Just add as many as you think that you'll need in order to do some detail modeling with the vertices. Perfect. Okay. So now I'm going to go back to vertex selection, and I'm going to start moving these vertices around to give it a little bit more of a nice curve. Just make sure that you're selecting both the front and the back so that we can keep it the same shape on both sides for right now. But just like we did before, where we were positioning those cubes initially with the extrusions, we're going to do the same thing at a little bit of a smaller scale to add some nice detail here. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, this is generally a pretty good looking bow shape from the side so far. I think that we do need to make some adjustments though, particularly to the side view. So let's go ahead and switch over to that. Now I'm going to get rid of our bow tie for right now just so we can focus on the side of the bow part here. So we'll go back to edge select mode, hit Control R to add a couple of edge loops, left click to confirm, hit enter, Control R to add another one, left click to confirm, then enter, and one more. There we go. And now I will go ahead and select this edge loop, and I'll scale it down just a tad. Now, I don't feel the need to bevel these edges just because I have a lot of edge loops in here already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and actually manipulate the existing edge loops. Hold down S, scale in a little bit. Oh, you know what? This wasn't a complete edge loop. As you can see here, it kind of ends right here. So I do like the shape we're going for right now. But I am going to go ahead and adjust this particular vertex. Like that. Now we'll do the same for the rest of our edges. In fact, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do a little bit of light editing here on this part. I'll bring all of these vertices over a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and bring this out a little bit as well, scale it out, so that we have a little bit more of a bouncy looking bow. Actually, no, I don't really like how that looks, so I'm going to right click to not confirm that, and I'll try bringing it in instead and see if that looks better, which I have a feeling it might. Hold down S and bring it in, and yes, that does look a lot better. Alright, so now what I would like to do is I'm going to actually go to face selection. I'm going to select these inner faces here, and I'm going to scooch them out just a tad. Alright, and this front side's looking pretty good. So now I will go to the back and do the same thing that we did for the front. I'll note here that I did mess up these vertices a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and fix those. Just scooching them down so that they're not clipping through the rest of the model. Scooching this one down and in a little bit. Perfect. Then I will bring these faces out. Alright, I think our bow's looking pretty good. So let me go ahead and switch back to object mode. Okay, so I don't want to use the mirror tool on this one just because our origin point isn't quite right in order to do that. So I'm just going to copy and paste. And I'm going to rotate like this. Go ahead and switch to the top view so that we can keep an eye on that. I will deselect my candy from the view to focus on the bow. And now we can move this a little bit further over. Now it's not going to be perfectly symmetrical in this case, but that's okay. It's pretty much good. We'll scooch these a little bit further in. Just for the record, I realize I forgot to say, but in order to get to this top view, I switched to the number 7 on the number pad. Okay, so I like this bow so far, but I do think that these vertices right here in the center are going to need to be scaled in a little bit so that they match up with our tie. So let me get rid of our stick in the layer menu. And I'll also go ahead and for right now click the bow tie off. Select both objects. Now I will select this one, hit tab, and start modifying these vertices to be scaled in a little bit. Okay, now that we've got this selected, we will go ahead and use the S key to drag them in like this. And just so that we can soften up this hard edge that we've created here, we'll go back to edge mode and we'll modify this edge. And just so that we have a little bit more diversity on our top view, I'm going to go ahead and do the same for the rest of these edge loops. I want the height of its thickness to be about on this edge loop here, so we'll start building down now. All right. Nice. I like that. So it looks like I did kind of jump the gun here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. It's pretty different from this one here, since we made a bunch of modifications to it. I do remember there being some kind of delete special in another program that I used, so let me see if there's an equivalent here. Okay, after a cursory Google search, I found out that there is a way to change this pivot point. I'm going to scooch it over here in the center where our bow tie would be so that I can duplicate this properly with the mirror modifier. So the controls to move your pivot point are going to be holding down Shift, Control, Alt, and C, and then clicking where we want it to go. Oops. Okay, so we want to be in the cursor tool in order to get this done, but we're going to move our pivot point into the center where our mouse is currently located. Let's actually go ahead and switch to one view so that it's perfectly on this y-axis. And with our cursor selected, we're going to go ahead and hit Shift, Control, Alt, and C. Oh, that didn't work. Now we're going to just scooch this little guy over here so that it's nice and centered, so that we can create our mirror modifier. That looks about right. Oops. And let's see if that helps. Nope, it is still referencing this pivot point here. So let me undo that. Okay, so there's not really a way for us to move this pivot point, so we are going to go ahead and have to duplicate it again after all and just rotate it around. So let's go ahead and copy, paste, and we'll go up here to the output menu right here. And we'll go ahead and go over here to the object menu, and we're going to rotate 180 degrees on the y-axis. And now we are going to scooch it on over, and we'll scooch it down a little bit. Let's go to our top view to do this so that we can try to make it as even as we can. Select our bow tie part. Scooch these back a little bit so that they're more in the bow tie. And now I'm going to go ahead and scale this outward a little bit more so that it hides these kind of edges of the bow part. So to do that, I'm going to actually select the scale tool and then scale it on. This part. I'm going to scooch them down a little bit and this one up a little bit. Personally, I think that this little lopsided bow is pretty cute. So let's see how it looks with the rest of the model so far. I'll turn on the candy and the stick. And that's not looking too bad at all. Very nice. We are going to go ahead and scooch our bow back though. So we'll just scooch it a little bit further into the stick to the point where it's not quite sticking out the back side of it, but it's pretty close. Okay, very good. Now these two objects I would like to combine into one. So let's see if we can do that. So we want these objects to be the same. So we're going to go ahead and select both of them. Go up here to Object. Go down here to Join. Now it is one object registered by Blender. And we'll go ahead and rename this in our Layer tab as Bow. And we will drag it over here with the rest of them. Perfect. We are almost done. So for this next part, I know what exactly it is I'm going to need to model. It is going to be the ribbon part down here. So in order to do that, I'm actually going to make some planes and not even worry about a cube or anything. So I'm going to turn all of these off to clear up my workspace a little bit. Hit Shift, A, go to Mesh, and Plane. And it is totally fine for it to be at this angle for right now. We will just switch it later. So I'm going to hit 7 on the number pad to go to the top view. And this one's pretty big, so I'm going to go ahead and scale it down. About like that should be fine. And now we're going to extrude some edges. So we have to tab into edit mode, hit 2 for the edge selection, click out, select this edge down here, hit E, and we will start creating a nice curved plane here. We still have this edge selected, so we're going to hit E again until we have a length that we like. Perfect. So as you can see, as I curved it, this got a little less thick than this one up here. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that by going into the vertex menu and scooching these vertices over. I made a mistake earlier while I was extruding, so I had to undo it a few times in order to get to this point. But I still have this edge selected, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude again. Left click and enter. There we go. Now let's fix those vertices that we talked about. Okay, so that looks pretty good down there, and I want to make this part up here a little bit skinnier. And this part a little thicker down here. Perfect. So now in order to get the look of the pointy parts, we're going to need to add a few edge loops. So in the top-down view, by pressing 7 on the num key, we're going to go ahead and do Control R, and right down the middle, enter, and a couple more. And I'm going to make 2 more edge loops between these 2 outer edge loops and the middle one, so we can give this middle one a more dramatic indent. So let me do that. There we go, there's 1 and 2. All right, now let's see about how we can make this look nice. We'll go to edge mode, select this center edge loop here, and we will scale it in by using this version. And it's looking pretty good. I'm going to edit the vertices to make it a little less awkward looking. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing with the other edge loops that are closer. Okay, now I'm going to try to make these more pointy, like the little triangle versions over here. So let's go back to vertex mode and do some tinkering. And a lot of this is really just kind of trial and error, just figuring out how to get the look that you want and adjusting as needed. That looks pretty good. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and hit face mode, and I'm going to use my box selector up here to select all of these faces, and then I'm going to hit E to start extruding them and bring them up just a tiny little bit, just like that, and click to confirm, hit enter, deselect, and as you can see we just have a nice little thin strip here. That's just going to give this a little more dimension. You don't typically want to just have a flat plane. You want it to have, you want it to be a closed mesh like this one. So now we have the base for our ribbon. So let us turn back on the rest of our lollipop. We'll tab back into object mode. Scooch this over like this. And I'm going to go ahead and manually rotate this one until it feels right. Okay, this looks like a good rotation for that one. I'll rotate a little bit this way. Perfect. Now I'll tab back into edit mode. Now we will scooch this down a little bit so that I can scale these vertices down up here. Tab back into edit mode. Hit 1 to go to vertex selection mode. Whoa, whoops. And we will scale these in. Okay, now I'm going to go back to edge select mode, select this edge loop, and we're going to hold down S and bring this in a little bit as well. Okay, now we'll tab back into object mode, scooch this part up and into the bow, and now let us duplicate it. So we're going to go ahead and select this part, hit Control C, Control V to paste, scooch it over a little bit, click off, select it again, and now we're going to rotate. And this one you can kind of just mess around with until it looks like you want. I'm going to do the top-down view just so I can see, and I'm going to get rid of my bow tie, candy, and my stick so that I can just focus on making these ribbon parts look nice and even. And that looks pretty even. So we'll go ahead and go back into this mode and turn on the rest of our model. And it looks like I need to adjust this one just a little bit. Not a big deal. We'll just rotate it. All right, looking pretty good. Looks like this one might have gotten a little bit messed up at some point. So let's go into edit mode, hit the 1 for vertex selection, and we will scooch this vertex down. And that should hopefully Maybe just move it out a little bit. It should hopefully be okay. There's probably something on the back side of this one too. Yep, there is. That's okay. So tab to get into object mode, deselect that object, select this one. Tab into edit mode. Scooch this vertex down and out. Now how did this happen? I just scooched that. So you'll want to just mess with these vertices until they look the way you want. Because we do want a hard seam here, but maybe not quite. There we go. Do the same on the other side. Now tab, select this object, tab for edit. All right, not too bad, not too bad. So that's the basic modeling process for creating a complex 3D model with a bunch of different parts.